Hello and welcome to the Child Psych Podcast. I'm Tanya Johnson, registered psychologist, registered play therapist, co-founder of the Institute of Child Psychology. Today's guest is Dr. Michelle Sherman, a clinical psychologist with over 30 years of experience supporting families navigating mental illness and trauma. She's a past Family Psychologist of the Year with the American Psychological Association, seasoned educator, therapist, researcher, and speaker. Michelle has published widely and currently serves as editor-in-chief of Couple and Family Psychology Research and Practice. Today we'll be talking about her powerful co-authored book, I'm Not Alone, which gives voice to the experiences of teens living with a parent who has mental illness. Dr. Sherman, such an important topic. Welcome today.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be with you today. Thank you for the opportunity to have this important conversation. Thank you.
So, Dr. Sherman, this book particularly is called I'm Not Alone, A Teen's Guide to Living with a Parent Who Has a Mental Illness or History of Trauma. What drew you or inspired you to write this book? And what's so unique about this particular book too is it talks specifically to teens. So what drew you and why were you talking to teens?
All of my work is really inspired by two things, and it is both a professional and a personal passion. I worked in the Veterans Affairs, the VA system, for about 18 years. And honestly, my whole commitment to families, more broadly, including teenagers, was awareness of all these folks in the waiting room. They're veteran, would go in for their 10, 15-minute appointment, they'd come back, and all these families are often feeling so confused and sad and overwhelmed and angry and all these sorts of feels. And the kids themselves, like, what did I do wrong? What's going on? All these sorts of things. And I really became aware of the need for developing some sort of support and information and resources for them. So it's absolutely from my clinical work as a psychologist, as well as my personal lived experience with numerous family members in my own family who live and have lived with mental illness. We've had several suicides in our family. And so this is absolutely a personal as well as a professional passion for me. With respect to why teenagers, well, gosh, I am just so aware of the adolescent period being a time of increased risk for the emergence of mental illness themselves as well. The stats say about 75% or so, right, of some sort of mental illness emerges during that time. And the immense gap in resources. We talk about these young people often being invisible. And we do know they're at higher risk for developing mental health problems themselves. Not that it's for sure they're going to develop illness. Most of them don't actually. But there's this huge both developmental increased risk as well as being in the family, nature, and nurture a risk. And just awareness of, wow, who's talking to these folks? Who's supporting these children? Who's talking to them? And so really awareness of this gap and wanting to help make a difference. And so the kind of funny story is, literally 20 years ago, this coming week, we have an annual family reunion. I'm heading there tomorrow. I said to my mom, who's a teacher, an educator, hey, Mom, do you want to write a book? And she said, yeah. So we actually we wrote our first 3 books in the mid-2000s. One was for teens whose parent had mental illness, one for teens whose parent had a trauma of some kind, and one for teens whose parent experienced military deployment. And so we did those in the mid-2000s, and then actually at the beginning of COVID, 5 years ago, I said to my mom, hey, I think we need to update this and let's write another book. So our passion for many years has been really on focus on these teenagers and the desire to see them, because we know that family systems can get very focused on the person with the illness and other adult caregivers. It makes sense, right? Taking to doctor appointments, navigating health insurance, their own emotional burden, maybe working 2 jobs, all these sorts of stuff. So it makes sense that the family system might be really focused on the adults. However, then these young people often kind of get lost and are ignored and are invisible in the scenario. And so my biggest hope, my mission is to increase awareness of, to get people talking about and empower people with resources. Because to be frank, and with all due respect to all my colleagues, so often providers don't even ask, do you have kids, to the adults, much less how are the kids doing? I want to change that. I've been trying to jump up and down for 30 years to change that, actually, and it's really hard. But I want to increase awareness and empower people with resources to help open these conversations.
Beautiful. Dr. Sherman, in my own clinical experience, because I work with a lot of kids and teens, very often if children that I'm seeing or the teens that I'm seeing have a parent with mental illness, their experience is exactly the title of their book. They feel very alone. It's this hush-hush topic. they often won't even tell me in the first few sessions, even though I've got the family history. It's like this stigma or this shame that they experience, and eventually they'll say, oh, my dad, struggles with PTSD. And it's like they test the waters, but there's this deep feeling of shame around it.
So much secrecy, right? So much shame, so much fear of judgment. And, I think we need to acknowledge the elephant in the living room here, too, is that part of what drives the secrecy is not only shame, embarrassment, fear of judgment, but fear of, here in the United States, we call it kind of child protective services. Might the children be removed from the home, which is a real fear. And so the parents are afraid of saying, I'm having a hard time parenting. The co-parents are afraid. The kids are afraid. And some research published here a few years ago in the States looked at child protective service involvement and compared situations in which the parent had a serious mental illness versus not. And CPS involvement was 8 times higher in which families in which there is serious mental illness. So there is some reason to believe. And sadly, at times that experience can be very punitive and very actually harmful for the family. So there's good reason at times, I think, that people are fearful. Hence the policy and broader implications of needing to show up with these families in a more empowering, supportive, allied, strength-based ways, rather than the punitive, I'm going to take your kids from your house, the parents' worst fear.
Totally. Dr. Sherman, as we talk about that, I think now would be a great time for us to chat about some of the kind of the common emotional responses that we see with our teens who are really navigating life with this parent who has mental health challenges.
Now, you've already kind of mentioned some that I really hear a lot and think a lot about. Certainly the shame. I can't have my friends over. Never know if my parents can be passed out on the couch or angry or in bed all the time. So shame. Uncertainty with the unpredictability. Many mental illnesses are cyclical. And so hard to know if I say to my parent, hey, will you come to my dance recital next week? If they'll be in a place that they're well enough to go. And then what do I tell my friends in terms of if they come and they're not in a good place or they're out of control at a basketball game and yelling at the coach? How embarrassing, right? So there's that embarrassment, there's the confusion, there's often the self-blame of what did I do wrong? And so although it seems logical to say, well, of course you didn't do anything wrong, it's not your fault. That's a message I think we still need to give kids, even kids of all ages, because we humans like to understand things and we like the world to be just and to make sense. And when it doesn't, we think, okay, well, if it's my fault, then maybe there's something we can do about it. Maybe I can change my behavior. So reassuring them it's not your fault is so important. The shame, the embarrassment, the confusion. And let's face it, we adults sometimes have a hard time explaining and talking about mental illness. It's hard to talk to kids. Certainly sadness. I think a lot about loss. This wasn't the relationship that I thought I would have, that I want that my friends have with their parent. Sadness. A lot of anger. Why won't you? Why don't you? Why does my family have to be this way? So anger, confusion, sadness, jealousy of other families. Loneliness. I think I hear a lot of loneliness, which we know is an epidemic anyway, right? But that sense of, again, no one else in my class and no one else that I know is having this experience, which feeds the shame and the isolation. So those are some of the things I think at times it intermingles with hope, like, oh, hey, my parent got on this new medication or they started this new treatment or things, maybe this will help. And so absolutely times of hope and times of love and connection. Another emotion I hear both in adults and kids is powerless. How can I help my parent? What can I do? Of course, we don't want to recommend or enable parentification or having the child take on adult responsibilities, although they often do in these families, help the kid still be a kid. But I do believe we human beings like to support those that we love. And so are there ways that you can show your mom, dad, whoever, can you send them a text message, leave a post-it, write a note, clean up their bedroom without being asked, ways in which you can show your love in ways that are appropriate for a young person. So, I think lots of emotions.
Dr. Sherman, I wonder for a teen who maybe sometimes experiences sadness or deep worry or has a day where they just feel confused, if there's a concern too that what they've seen happen for their parents is going to happen to them too.
Absolutely. Is this my future? Is this what I have to be like? Absolutely. Deep worry and fear. And what can I do about it? Maybe, since we do know there is a genetic component, hey, my grandma's like this, my aunt's like this, my mom's like this, so I'm going to be like this someday too, which can be really terrifying. And what can I do to try to prevent or change the course? So absolutely, it's a huge fear. Will they grow out of it? Is it just kind of a crisis? Is this my future?
Yeah. And what's the research currently showing us in terms of the trajectory for teens with a parent with mental illness?
Although the fear is real and understandable, actually, very recent research has found that, frankly, most people who have a loved one, meaning first-degree relative, a parent or a sibling with like schizophrenia, 92% do not develop schizophrenia themselves. Similarly with like depression, 85% of people who have a first-degree relative with depression do not develop depression themselves. So yes, are they at higher risk? Yes, they are. But it's pretty good batting averages. And then what I try to talk to families and children about is, and there are things you can do about it. There's been some really cool longitudinal following young people over time, looking at things that actually they can do that can increase their resilience, their ability perhaps to prevent maybe the illness, and if it does emerge, have effective coping skills for being able to manage it. So I'm focusing on what you have control over.
That's beautiful. I love that. And now my next question is related to that. What are some of those strategies? This is fascinating.
Yeah, excellent. So part of it, and part of why we wrote the book, is education. Learning about this stuff. Understanding, again, it's not your fault. Understanding what some of these illnesses can be. Knowing how to recognize and talk about some of these things that are developmentally appropriate. But educate yourself. Secondly, have regular care providers in your life that you can know and work with over time. Because like with many things, cancer, whatever else, early intervention is huge. So don't wait till you've been having, been in bed for, 4 months at a time and haven't been eating and sleeping, when these sorts of things start. Now, I'm not saying overreact to bad days. We all have bad days. But when you notice patterns, seek help early. Get information, seek help early, have providers that you can trust. Try to avoid isolation. As we just talked a few minutes ago, it's very common to feel so alone, but having other people in it, to be frank, it may not be your biological parent at the time or a co-parent. They may not have the resources. So as I talk again to families, who else can be in your camp? Who else? Perhaps it's a neighbor, an aunt, a teacher, a clergy, who knows? But connect with and find other people, other activities in your life. The other things are one that I think people say, oh, of course, Michelle, we know this is true. But common sense isn't always common practice, right? Things like making sure we get adequate sleep, making healthy eating choices, being careful to limit or avoid substance use, these sorts of things, social connection. All these things are really, really important too. Minimizing and being careful about social media use. All these things actually are related to our health, and they are choices that we can make today. So all these sorts of things. But I think a big part is education, connecting with people who can take care of you, learning about illness, not overreacting to little things, and then making healthy choices.
And I love that because it gives our youth back a sense of agency. There are things that I can actually do. Dr. Sherman, as we talk about them kind of reaching out to that circle of support, and your book is beautiful in that it actually shows really concrete ways on how to figure out who are safe and trusted people and how much to actually share. And I'm wondering if for many of our teens, there may be a kind of a sense of betrayal in talking to a friend or to a teacher about what's actually happening at home.
It can be hard. It can be hard to know what to share and with whom and how to respond when people are hurtful and unkind. And let's just face it, as a bit of a PS to my last comment and an intro to this one, sadly, there is a lot of inaccurate information on social media. You may be reading all sorts of information or saying things or hearing from friends or other people, stuff that's actually not helpful and not accurate. And so being careful where you get the information, trying to find trustworthy sources, be it counselors, hopefully teachers or things like that. But at times, kids, adults can be mean, can be hurtful, and can say mean things about your parents. And let's face it, no matter what the issue, that's really hard. That's really difficult. And so picking who you want to connect with, how much you want to share, I encourage sharing bits at a time and seeing how it goes, trying to gauge sort of reaction. More commonly than not, given the prevalence of mental illness being so high, most people are going to say they know someone who has mental illness too. So you may be surprised that it may not be like, oh, wow, or they may kind of already have a sense or know or things of that nature. So yes, you may get disappointing responses. And at those times, it's so important to use the healthy coping strategies. And we have a whole page on those, whole section on how to take care of your spirit when you're hurting. That's so important. But my encouragement is to keep trying, because hopefully you will find people who will really listen, who won't rush in to give advice or judge. It can be hard when we're hurt, but keep trying. And if you're just simply not able to find people, perhaps talk to your parents about you'd like to see a mental health professional or a clergy or someone like that or a family advocate. There are lots of people who might be able to support you. But keep trying. It's too heavy. It's too much to try to walk on your own.
So Dr. Sherman, as we talk about the power of relationship, I think my last question is actually a big question. How do we strengthen the relationship between the teen to the parent and then the parent to the teen?
Oh, great question. It's so important. It's so important. I come from kind of an attachment perspective. That's how I think about relationships and parents and children. And so mental illness aside for a second, having both sides lean into trying to have relationship be a safe base, a place where both people can feel seen and connected and the child feels that they're cared for. Part of the challenge with mental illness, as we spoke a couple minutes ago, is that at times it can be cyclical and unpredictable, which again can lead to disappointment and not contribute to secure attachment and knowing that when I ask for you, you're always going to be there. So at those times, I think having either other adults or older siblings step in or having a parent with illness be able to communicate in ways that I'm really sorry. I'm really disappointed it's not going to work out for me to come to your soccer game tonight. I'm really going to commit to being able to come next time. So being able to talk about it rather than the kid wondering, what's going on. And then really leaning into and looking for rituals or things that they can do on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be big, expensive things. It can be that we take the dog to the dog park. It can be we go and get a coffee together. Any of these sorts of things that can be enjoyable. It can be playing checkers, playing a board game, having that time when things are connected to be able to have those special times together and enjoy those. And remember that at times when your parent is struggling, that it's not about you. That yes, it's more important for you to take good care of yourself at that time, but it's not about you. And so as I was saying earlier, in the reciprocal direction, empowering kids that there are ways you can show your parent you can love them and be careful that you're not taking responsibility for their well-being. Hard, tricky, right? But I think there are ways that we can empower young people to show their parent that they care. And the biggest thing to me is spending time. I was talking to a psychologist the other day who was talking about oftentimes teens say, well, I don't want my parent around, or I don't want to talk, or leave me alone, or things like that. And so the coach of just being in the same room, you don't have to talk to them, just being present, just being there is powerful. So show up, be consistent, explain, give information in a developmentally appropriate way, be open for questions so the child can understand and feel safe, because normally it shouldn't be a one-time conversation, right? This is something that kind of evolves over time. And then really leaning into when things are better, making that quality time together. And then letting them know, I'm sorry, kid, I can't help you with your homework tonight, or I can't take you to your dance rehearsal, but my sister, my aunt, your aunt can, or other people who can be there for you when I can't.
Yeah, I love that. Show up, be consistent, empower and involve with them, lean in, and be open, be honest when you just cannot do it.
Exactly. Because there are times mental illness makes it really, really, really hard. Parenting is hard to begin with, right? Much less when you perhaps are really heavy with the depression or in a manic state, or hearing voices or seeing things or having beliefs. You just cannot be present with your toddler being on the ground playing, Legos, or with your teenager and talking about their latest video game or whatever it may be, or disciplining them because they acted inappropriately. Sometimes mental illness just is so consuming that it makes it that they can't. So who else is on the team? Who else can help?
Dr. Sherman, any final words for parents listening in today? I know this has been so helpful. Now, what I love about your work is that it's not based in some psychological theory that's really hard to touch. It's super concrete.
Good. Yes, my biggest message is hope. Our company's name is Seeds of Hope Books. And relationships, family, mental illness, this is hard stuff. You don't have to be perfect. There are going to be times that you're going to mess up, times that your kid's going to act up. That's okay. If you lean into and try to strengthen that bond, that connection, usually children are going to be resilient. Are going to be okay. Get additional support from them, but keep showing up when you can. Communicate. And also communicating to your children a message of hope. Because let's face it, there are new treatments, new therapies, new options, and you're role modeling healthy coping by getting help. So telling your children you're going to counseling, you're taking medication, whatever, at developmentally appropriate ways, but you're role modeling healthy behaviors by saying, yeah, this is really, really hard, but I'm going to my support group tonight, or I'm going to reach out to my family advocate, whomever else, that I'm not alone, our family isn't alone. And just like when our family went through grandma's cancer, a lot of people brought over casseroles and helped and things like that. Same now that our family's going through a tough time, but we can go through this together. So spirit of hope.
Oh, beautiful. I love it. Dr. Sherman, where can our listeners find out more about you?
Yeah, so our website is www.seeds, with an S, Seeds of Hope Books, with an S.com. So Seeds of Hope Books. Our books are available anywhere. They're available specifically in Canada at, I believe it's Indeed. Is that the name of their bookstore? Yeah. So they're available there in Canada, on Amazon, wherever else. But yeah, I love doing talks and workshops and all sorts of stuff. So please feel free to reach out to me if I can be of support. And you can see sample chapters, pages, our parallel book for adults who love someone with mental illness called Loving Someone, Mental Illness or PTSD, Skills, Hope, and Strength for Your Journey, which is similar to the teen one, except again, it's for adults, but filled with skills and activities. And both of our books, I would also like to add, are not just written by like a psychobabble, because I tend to write, for adults. We've had probably hundreds of reviewers, people with lived experience, teen, cultural sensitivity reviewers, all sorts of people. So they truly reflect community. And we hope that they're kind of support group in a book, because they're stories from people with lived experience that we really hope helps bring it home, rather than just, these are the signs of schizophrenia or whatever. And you can Google that, right? And people don't really need that. So we try to connect with the reader in a way through real life stories.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Sherman.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was really lovely.